Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, since it's opened its doors 4 years ago, the CFPB has had a consumer complaint hotline where consumers can call in, they can go online, they can lodge a complaint about a financial product or service. And that's what consumers have been doing. They come in and they complain about sketchy fees on a checking account, errors on a credit report, harassment by a debt collector. The agency then sends those complaints onto the company, who then has some time to respond to both the consumer and the CFPB and to try to resolve the issue. Now, the agency has received more than 650,000 complaints through the hotline. Could you give us a sense, Director Cordray, just a ballpark figure is fine, about how many of those complaints were resolved to the consumer's satisfaction and how much consumers have recovered financially through this process?
Yeah, and I'll say the arc of consumer complaints continues to increase in terms of volume, and I believe that's simply a function of there's still a lot of lack of visibility. People don't necessarily know what the CFPB is, and they'll know more over time, I hope, and I hope they will see that we're providing value to them. That's what we aim to do. I think we had something like 700 and some credit card complaints in our first month, and we're now up to about 25,000 complaints per month across the entire range of financial services. What happens then is we give the consumer a chance to tell us whether they were satisfied with the resolution of their complaint, or if not, what they continue to be concerned about. And we then prioritize issues for further investigation or perhaps enforcement action or supervisory activity. And the institutions know that, and I think that pushes them to be more thoughtful about how they try to resolve those complaints in the first instance. And it's, I don't know the exact numbers on this, but it may be 20% of consumers continue to feel they have a dispute once we've worked through our process. And then we have, as I say, further steps that we can take. In terms of how much resolution there's been for consumers, it's been many millions of dollars. It's hard to know exactly for sure. They don't always tell us how the matter was resolved, although many of them come back to our Tell Your Story line and tell us, often with real gratitude, that they did get a resolution, and they couldn't get a resolution for months and months and months, but after speaking to us and us working it, they got one promptly. And that really thrills us when we hear that. But the other thing is there's a lot of non-monetary relief people get from those complaints. Getting something fixed on their credit report can loom very large for them, yes, but it's hard to quantify.
Although I take it certainly does have financial ramifications.
Absolutely.
To get your credit report
It may be
fixed.
They can get a mortgage then that, yes, they couldn't otherwise get. That may be worth thousands of dollars to them. It's hard to quantify. Debt collection issues are a constant source of irritation for consumers. The wrong debt, or they're not the right person or whatever, and they can't get people to stop calling their home. I don't know how to put a price on that, but getting 12 calls a day or calls in the workplace and that's not the right person or whatever it is, us being able to stop that looms large for people. And another point you've made to me is it's sometimes easier to quantify, it's always easier to quantify the amount of relief we give back to people for things that happened to them before today. And we can't easily quantify the benefit to them of things that will not happen to them tomorrow because of changes made today. Those go on into the future and accumulate extensively over time. We don't have any way of putting a price tag on that, but I got to think it's very significant.
Great. So you've created this website. We're getting roughly about 25,000 people a month who come on the website. And rising.
Mm-hmm.
And
website or phone.
Or phone.
Yeah.
And get some resolution. We say, looks like roughly about 80% get some kind of resolution, mm-hmm, here. So, the agency also just recently went live with this consumer complaint database. And here you have a collection of thousands of narratives from real consumers about problems they're having with financial products or with companies. And it's all sortable now online. So it's possible to go online and see it by product, by date, by where the consumer lives. For example, just this morning, I went to the database and looked for all the complaints from Massachusetts about mortgages. So it's a powerful way to see what kinds of issues are cropping up in the communities that all of us represent. Now, I know it's only been online for just a few weeks, but I wondered if you could describe how you think this will help improve the market for financial products.
So the database has actually been online longer, although it was really broken into very generic categories, which I think were less insightful for people than hearing in the consumer's own words what the problem was as they saw it. I think that's incredibly important. We've described the narrative as really the heart and soul of the complaint. I mean, for me to make a complaint and then have it be categorized as somehow debt collection, wrong amount, one of a number of complaints, and that's all the more you know about it. It's just not nearly as insightful as to be able to hear exactly what happened to me, the calls I got at home, the effect on my life. It's just tangible. It's real. It's the difference between statistics and actual stories, and to me that's very significant.
So,
the database, I think, is really causing institutions to have to compete on customer service, which is a good thing. And the good ones are competing very well on customer service, and others are having to improve. And that's a kind of pressure that I think is a positive pressure. I'll also mention that there are many members of Congress, many members of this committee, who are now referring complaints over to us when they come to their office, and we encourage you to do that. We're supposedly the experts, and we're happy to work those complaints, and then you can see and keep track of how they go. We want every American who has a problem to potentially know to come to us and see if we can get it resolved for them. We can't always, but we're always going to try.
well, I really appreciate that. And I see this as a prime example of how government can take small steps that will have a very positive impact on the market. There's now a bit more accountability for companies that mistreat or just plain cheat their customers. On the other hand, there's some public acknowledgement for the companies who treat their customers well and resolve their complaints quickly. Mr. Chairman, if I can, I just want to slip in one little follow-up to the point that Senator Brown made earlier, and that's about forced arbitration clauses. As Senator Brown highlighted, the report that the CFPB recently released contains some damning findings about how forced arbitration clauses fundamentally tilt the process against consumers and keep them from effectively fighting back even when they've been cheated. Now, it's clear that the biggest banks and some of their Republican friends in the House of Representatives see the writing on the wall here, and that is that a rule is coming. So they're pushing legislation that would force the CFPB to redo the report before you issue any new rules. I think this is a stall tactic, plain and simple. The report took 3 years and 728 pages to complete. It carefully documents a wide range of problems. It is thorough and extensive. I just want to ask you very briefly, because the chairman is indulging and I'm over time here, but can we get on the record the steps the agency took to ensure that this study was complete and accurate, including soliciting and considering comments from the financial services industry?
Yeah, sure. First of all, we did a request for information at the very outset to ask people how we should go about doing the study. So we really broadly solicited people's thoughts and heard a lot from both industry and different kinds of markets, and also from consumer groups and others. And we erred toward the side of being very comprehensive about what they told us we should do in the study and trying to do as much of it as we possibly could. We found that in many areas this was breaking brand new ground. There wasn't necessarily data easily accumulated on that. We did go to the American Arbitration Association. We were able to get significant data about the arbitration process, which really shed light on that that people had not had before. We looked at a number of different ways of trying to get at judicial resolutions of similar matters. We were helped in part because there were some class actions involving certain institutions who at one point had stopped doing their arbitration agreements, so you could actually see what the before and after was. Did it actually save consumers money for them to have this enforced arbitration process? And we were able to map that and discern that. We looked at enforcement actions as another means of affecting the marketplace, and people talked some about our consumer complaint process as a new element here. It was a very comprehensive report. I honestly don't think we could think of a single thing we could have done that we didn't do. We're always happy to hear more, and we've had tremendous input all along, and now since we've given roundtables and other opportunities to digest the report, talk to us about it, and that's an ongoing process. And as we now embark on a rulemaking process, there will be small business review panels. We found that useful, and there will be notice and comment process on that. everybody will have their say. We will listen to it all, digest it as best we can, and do what we're supposed to do as Congress told us to do, act in the public interest, consistent with the results of that report to determine what to do about this.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman,
you.
for your indulgence on this.
Thank
I
you,
really appreciate it. It's an important issue.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.